And I want to be very clear that I believe, in fact, I know that towards the end, Charlie was fighting for custody of himself. I want to say that. I want to say that plainly. And there are lies that are being told and they need to be slapped down right now.
We begin, as so many broadcasts have lately, with Candace Owens' voice tearing through the podcast airwaves. Not just stirring the pot, she hurls it off the stove. Against a stark black backdrop, mic locked in place, she launches her latest episode. Who ordered the hit on Charlie Kirk? There are no whispers here, no hedging. Owens declares this was no random shooting. In her telling, Kirk was targeted because he was softening his loyalty to Israel. She paints the picture. Hushed conversations, Kirk confiding his fears, even naming names. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. A hedge fund billionaire, Bill Ammon. According to her, Kirk's phone lit up with shadowy threats, his paranoia growing, his life shrinking into constant watchfulness. Owens frames herself as more than just a pundit. She was an insider. She worked under Kirk at Turning Point USA, called him a brother, saw his anxieties firsthand. That claim gives her story weight, even as she laces it with tabloid flair. The confidant who lets just enough rumor linger in the air for the audience to choke on. Her history with Kirk runs deep. He brought her into Tfusa in 2017, tasked with polishing the group's image. Their bond fractured when Owens veered too far into conspiracies, but she never stopped circling back. Now, she insists she was the last to hear his doubts, the final witness to a man haunted not by the American left, but by power brokers in Tel Aviv, Manhattan, and perhaps even within his own camp. Should we trust her? Owens' critics would rather chew glass than believe a word she says. But she isn't speaking to them. She's playing to her own audience, the ones hungry for a story too jagged, too radioactive for the mainstream press to touch. And truth be told, this story already had more twists than a streaming drama before Owens even cracked the mic. Charlie Kirk wasn't just another pundit. He built a conservative empire. Turning Point USA was the Red Bull of campus politics, slick, caffeinated, impossible to ignore. But in the months leading up to his death, something shifted. Kirk started entertaining dissent. He opened the stage to voices that rattled his old base. Tucker Carlson, infamous for his uneasy dance with foreign policy, suddenly appeared at Kirk's invitation. Dave Smith, a comedian with an anti-war streak, hammered Israeli policy in front of crowds that once roared at his jokes. Owens weaves these moments into her story, stitching a pattern of danger. Kirk was straying, maybe even whispering in the ex-president's ear. And somewhere, the wrong people started paying attention. That's when the ground began to quake. We don't have to rely on rumor, we have footage. Carlson at Kirk's funeral, standing at the lectern, likening the fallen activist to Jesus betrayed by men sitting around eating hummus, plotting how to silence him. The quote hits like a brick through stained glass. He never says Jews, but he doesn't need to. It's the wink, the coded gesture, the subtext that screams louder than words. Suddenly, even cautious commentators start wondering if this conspiracy isn't just internet chatter, but the script everyone in the room already knew. And Owens? She doesn't waste a beat. She leans into the Hamptons angle, claiming Kirk was dragged into a secret intervention. There, in some polished mansion, hedge fund titan Bill Ammon and a cadre of pro-Israel power brokers confronted him. Threats, fury, broken trust. In Owens' telling, it was less a conversation than a showdown, and Ammon left with blood in his eyes. Bill Ammon, more at home moving billions on Wall Street than firing off threads on X, suddenly drops into full crisis management mode. He floods his feed with screenshots, cordial texts exchanged with Kirk, timestamps neatly aligned, pleasantries intact. The message is loud and desperate. This is what innocence looks like when you're a billionaire. It's a spectacle, a man of penthouses and boardrooms rolling in the mud of social media. And like every billionaire who tries to douse a scandal, Ammon only feeds it. His "Hey man" texts are dissected like sacred scrolls, every emoji pulled apart for coded meaning. The crowd is left to decide, is Ammon proving his innocence, or gaslighting the world in real time? From there, the machine roars to life. Headlines spill into the mainstream. What started as another fringe rant now dominates the news cycle. Owens accuses Amon and Israel itself of threatening Kirk. Amon denies the Hamptons showdown. The story mutates with each new soundbite. To some, Owens becomes a tragic Cassandra, punished for daring to name names. To others, she's the opportunist of the decade, thriving on chaos. Old colleagues weigh in. Kirk's own pastor pleads with Owens to show restraint, insisting Kirk would have extended her the same respect. Rival podcasts dissect their falling out, transforming a personal feud into another subplot in America's endless opera of betrayal. Even Turning Point USA issues a statement, saying the pair remained cordial, which in DC dialect is just one step above open war, but Owens isn't the only one on the stage. The real shockwave comes from the top. Twice in a single week, Benjamin Netanyahu himself, Prime Minister of Israel, a man balancing war, fragile coalitions, and the looming shadow of prison, steps forward to issue public denials. He calls the rumors insane, false, outrageous. It's bizarre theater. Has any world leader ever paused mid-crisis to deny ordering a hit on an American conservative activist? The fact that Netanyahu feels compelled to respond at all only throws fuel on the fire. His words are clipped, replayed, analyzed by body language experts like episodes of a reality show with no escape. Is this the sound of an innocent man brushing off lunacy, or a guilty conscience trying to snuff out a story before it detonates? Meanwhile, official channels scramble. The FBI is said to be pressing Utah authorities to wrap up the case, to pin the shooting on Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old allegedly radicalized by leftist ideology. But in Owens' telling, Robinson isn't the story at all. He's just a scapegoat, a patsy planted to tie up loose ends to convenient scapegoat. That's how Candace Owens frames Tyler Robinson. She zeroes in on the evidence, or more precisely, the gaps. Grainy rooftop footage of a shooter clad in black doesn't match Robinson's supposed t-shirt and jeans. The lone eyewitness swears the rifle didn't even look the same. And the bullet fragments? Too shattered, she says, to ever be traced back to his gun. YouTube has already turned this into a cottage industry. Entire channels now dissect anomalies frame by frame. The mystery man caught tampering with CCTV, the construction crew rolling in less than a week after the shooting, the prosecutor's messages that sound, in Owens' words, so federally written. It's just plausible enough to keep the conspiracy machine humming. Then comes Joe Rogan. After days of silence spent hunting elk, naturally he weighs in. And when Rogan finally talks, he doesn't tiptoe. He calls the official story horseshit and marvels at the absurdity of the timeline. How does a kid with no military training climb onto a rooftop unnoticed? How is no one watching? America's biggest podcaster is suddenly suggesting the shooting might be a psyop. From there, the unanswered questions multiply. The shooter's tactical gear, missing surveillance footage, contradictory witnesses. Rogan delivers it all with the tone of a man convinced the rabbit hole only goes deeper. At this point, the Kirk shooting isn't just a case. It's the open casting call for America's next great conspiracy. The rumor mill devours everything. Nobody escapes. Late-night comics get dragged in. Jimmy Kimmel's show is briefly yanked after a joke about Kirk, then reinstated after a Twitter mob erupts. Disney and ABC wobble between outrage and ratings panic. What began as a feud between podcasters now spirals into a freedom of speech showdown. Meanwhile, facts are melting. Utah's governor insists Robinson was radicalized online, far removed from his conservative family, maybe even influenced by his transgender partner, depending on which talking point's in play. Authorities have no confession. The FBI and state can't agree on what to release. The scraps we do get, bullet shards, shell casings, a suspiciously fast cleanup, only deepen mistrust. Every denial feels like confirmation. And still, Turning Point USA pushes forward. The campus tour continues, now featuring a rotating cast of right-wing stars auditioning for Kirk's empty chair. Merch sales explode, audiences swell, and the brand becomes bigger than its founder. Figures from J.D. Vance to Tucker Carlson attach themselves to his legacy. For Owens, it's vindication. Every denial, every awkward text thread, every furious rebuttal feeds her narrative. To her listeners, it's all proof of a cover-up. And as whispers leap from podcasts into Congress, the stakes climb higher. Why is Israel's prime minister answering a YouTuber? Why is a Wall Street billionaire fighting in the comments? Why does no one have clean surveillance footage? Each question dangles in the air, daring anyone, to answer. Through it all, Owens keeps broadcasting. Every word sharpened for maximum disruption. Every sentence framed as proof she's the only one brave enough to ask what others buried. But the backlash finally comes. Out of the stillness after Kirk's funeral, his pastor, Rob McCoy, a Turning Point insider with real clout, steps up. And he doesn't hedge. His rebuke of Owens lands like scripture. I only wish, in this time of mourning, she could be the friend to Charlie that he was to her. He would never have treated Candace or her family in such a way had this tragedy been hers. It's more than a plea. It's a warning. A line drawn between loyalty and exploitation, delivered from the very heart of Kirk's movement. For anyone who ever doubted how far Candace Owens had drifted from Turning Point, this was the moment it all went public. Once the face of their urban engagement campaign, she now sat on the outside, airing grievances on podcasts. And when Rob McCoy, Kirk's pastor and the movement's spiritual anchor, stood up and rebuked her, it hit harder than any fact check. This wasn't about optics. It was about betrayal. For years, Owens had leaned on her friendship with Kirk as proof of authenticity, access, insider credibility. Now that very community was accusing her of trading grief for clicks, memory for spectacle. A movement built on loyalty was policing one of its own, forcing the question, was Owens chasing truth, or just chasing headlines? The walls began to close in. Bill Ammon, billionaire financier and kingmaker, entered the fight with the cold fury only the ultra-wealthy can summon. He dumped screenshots of text exchanges with Kirk, free of emojis or drama, practically shouting, "This is what innocence looks like." He called Owens' story categorically false, even hinting at a defamation suit. In today's media circus, that meant the battle could leap from Twitter into a federal courtroom. Owens didn't blink. She accused Ammon of unleashing attack dogs at the New York Post to smear her. What once would have been settled in quiet phone calls was now fought in real time, broadcast, memed, and weaponized. Ammon's denials, Netanyahu's press conferences, McCoy's sermons, all of it fed the narrative that Owens wasn't just up against critics, but the establishment itself. That's when the spectacle took on a new shape. Suddenly, the question wasn't whether Owens was telling the truth. It was why so many powerful men were desperate to silence her. Her followers saw this as proof she was right. Her skeptics saw it as classic Candace, martyrdom as brand strategy, and in the shadows, Tucker Carlson played his role with surgical precision. He lobbed his grenade at Kirk's funeral, likening the activist's death to Jesus betrayed by men sitting around eating hummus. Jewish groups called it blood libel, one of the most toxic accusations imaginable. But Carlson, veteran of every media dogfight, kept his phrasing just vague enough to slip away, leaving Owens to take the hits. She was branded reckless, he polished. Yet both were doing the same thing, turning tragedy into narrative, grief into content. The grifters and gatekeepers of right-wing media went into overdrive. Book launches, podcast marathons, post-funeral speaking tours. Kirk's ghost became a commodity, monetized at dizzying speed. Meanwhile, the official story cracked under pressure. Robinson wasn't cooperating. There was no confession. The bullet casings bore bizarre inscriptions, taunts aimed at internet subcultures. Robinson's transitioning partner became a sideshow, even as officials admitted they had no clear ties to the crime. And still, the questions mounted. Why did construction crews move in days after the shooting? Why did surveillance vanish? Why did Netanyahu, juggling war and his own legal battles, feel the need to deny a podcaster's claims? Every denial, meant to calm, only added fuel. For some, it was noise. For others, it was confirmation that why now, the conservative movement was eating itself alive. Owens kept insisting she had the receipts, that everyone else was lying. Her voice grew louder, sharper. The friends who once stood with her now turned away. But she pressed on, telling her audience history would vindicate her. The fissure widened. Some huddled around Kirk's memory, desperate to preserve dignity. Others tore at every loose thread, searching for villains in shadows. The fight stretched from cable studios to congressional hearings, from podcasts to Sunday sermons. Closure was nowhere in sight, each rumor bigger, louder, more theatrical than the last, and so we're left with the question, are we watching the unveiling of a hidden political plot, or just the tragic spectacle of a movement devouring itself? Did Candace Owens reveal Kirk's final fears, or spin a conspiracy from grief and thin air? You decide. Drop your take in the comments. Because in a world where even facts are up for grabs, your version of the story might just be the next twist. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and don't believe everything you hear. Not even from us.